Good morning. Thank you all for coming, and thank you all for your practice. We're coming to the end of, no, we're at the end of a 7 or 8 week practice period. And hopefully you're a little bit like me, wishing that this could go on. Wouldn't it be great if we could just do this all the time? Well, yeah, I used to feel that way at the end of a practice period. Can't it just continue? And then I suppose there are certain practicalities that make the particular container of a practice period impractical. There are other things that need to be done. And if the practice period was our normal day-to-day life, then we would need to do something to have a practice period. So that'd be great. And that's the way it is when you're living at Green Gulch or San Francisco Zen Center or Tassajara. Just living there when you're not in a practice period is like us being in a practice period. Right? And then because you're living there, well, there has to be something that makes it a practice period, right? So you're living there, and there are times when you're in a practice period and times when you're not. So living there makes practice easier because it's in the environment, it's in your day-to-day life. And then we go into a practice period, which makes practice even easier because there's more of a schedule and fewer options. So that was the idea of our practice period, a period of time where we make practice the center of our life, or more central than it already is. We give more time to our practice, we emphasize our practice, and somehow or other, because of the schedule, practice is made easier. It's a little bit difficult to keep up the kind of schedule that we had just living on our own or in our normal day-to-day life. It's possible, but a little bit more difficult. And then within that practice period, we had 2 retreats, one at the beginning and one at the end, Seijiki and Rohatsu. And those retreats are like mini practice periods, so where we make the schedule even more intense, reduce our options, so to speak, and practice is made even easier. It's also made more difficult. It's made more difficult because of the intensity of it. Fewer options. On the one hand, that makes practice easy. On the other hand, that makes it difficult. Because we're doing the same thing again and again. Or maybe not making it difficult, but making it more intense. And I feel as though this is a little bit like breathing. You breathe in, and then you breathe out. You fill your lungs, and then you empty your lungs. We breathe our practice in. We call that a practice period. And then we breathe our practice out. after the practice period. So we're coming to our exhale, where we let our practice out into the world. And in some ways we have been doing that. But the particular container of the practice period will no longer be there. Well, it will come back. But in between, it won't be there. So we'll be exhaling our practice into the world. So a good time to reflect that everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end, including practice periods, and including those periods that are in between practice periods, the non-practice periods. Okay. A little bit like glaciers. We are currently in an interglacial period. That's a period between glaciers, okay, or a period between glaciation. So we're entering into an inter-practice period. And what we do with it is up to us. There's a very interesting saying in Zen mind, beginner's mind, where Suzuki Roshi says, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the experts, there are few. And since the book is called Zen mind, beginner's mind, there's a sense that in the previous couplet, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the experts, there are few. And then if you take that into consideration with the title of the book, Zen mind, beginner's mind. So in the title, it's as though beginner's mind is synonymous with Zen mind, or Zen mind is beginner's mind. So the title of the book immediately puts us in the seat of beginner's mind as good. Well, if Zen mind is good, beginner's mind must be good. And when I first saw the book, the title was very attractive because, of course, I saw myself as a beginner. I wasn't even a beginner, I hadn't even begun. But the idea was that this book would somehow be suitable for beginners. People who wanted to know something about Zen. And reading the book, I remember reading it and just having this, it's like I could call it a jaw-dropping experience, or I could call it a penny-dropping experience. It's just this realization that there's another way to go about life. And I could kind of get a prelude to the turning around of consciousness that would orient me in a different direction. I was just, wow, there's another way to live your life. And the sense of that other way to live my life was simply conveyed by Suzuki Roshi's way of saying things from the perspective that he was saying things from. That there is another way to look at life, or another way to experience life, or another way to approach life. The implication was that maybe up till then I'd got the wrong end of the stick, or maybe I'd got the wrong stick. But there was another perspective being communicated, and that was intriguing, fascinating. So yes, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. The mind just wanders into this hall or theater of infinite possibilities. What could this new perspective be? So many possibilities that you can't perceive them in details. It's almost like the possibility of possibilities, that you could possibly enter into this perspective. So that's Zen mind, beginner's mind. So is he presenting them in the title as the same thing? Or is he presenting them in contrast? My impression is he's presenting them as the same, or Zen mind is beginner's mind, or beginner's mind is Zen mind. Then we get to this other phrase. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, and in the expert's, there are few. So I'd like to dwell on that one too. On the one hand, it points us in the direction of, yeah, I don't want to be an expert. I don't want to have narrowed perspective. I don't want to have few possibilities. I want to have many possibilities. Okay. So in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. And in the expert's, there are few. So it seems to confirm a kind of a bias that we may have picked up from the title. Beginner is good, expert is bad. Is that really what's being said? Or is that really the meaning I want to take? Is many possibilities better than few possibilities? There's a certain sense in which the many possibilities of a beginner's mind can lead to confusion and inaction. Oh, I could do this or I could do that. I've got too many options. So do those many possibilities translate into many options? Do those many possibilities translate into inactivity or an inability to do something? How do we hold those many possibilities? I just remembered my first practice period at Green Gulch, and everybody did a certain amount of time in the kitchen. And I was asked to chop up so many onions or whatever, and there I was chopping up an onion. And the Tenzo, Sado Lee de Barros, I don't think I knew he was the Tenzo at the time. I don't think I had even figured out that there was a Tenzo. I think maybe I thought the Fukuten was the Tenzo, or I thought the Fukuten was in charge of the kitchen because the Fukuten was assigning jobs. So this old guy comes up to me and says, "There's many ways to chop an onion." Okay, well, that's a good beginner. Yeah, there are many ways to chop an onion, but this is the way I'd like you to do it, right? So that's an opportunity to either be a beginner or an expert. Perhaps if I thought, I know how to chop an onion, right? Perhaps that's what's being got at in this contrast. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. Okay, you want me to do it that way? Yeah, there's many ways to chop an onion. I'll do it that way. Or do I want to come at it with, I know how to chop an onion, and who do you think you are to tell me how to chop an onion? So do you consider yourself an expert at chopping onions? And you can see this when people go into the kitchen. And you see it especially when you're Fukuten or Tenzo. And you actually go up to somebody and you say, yeah, there's many ways to peel a carrot, but this is the way I would like you to do it. And you get a sense of their resistance or not resistance. So maybe that's what's meant in the beginner's mind. There are many possibilities. But very few beginners act like that. Very few beginners act like beginners in that sense. Quite often beginners think they know it. And the many possibilities isn't there. Or they think the many possibilities mean that I can do it the way I want to do it, right? You're the one, you're the Tenzo, you're the advanced practitioner, you're the one who should be holding the many possibilities and allow me to do it the way I want to do it, right? So quite often the beginner behaves like they're an expert. So can we be a beginner in that sense? Being open to doing it somebody else's way because we see that there are many possibilities, many possible ways of doing it. And maybe it's the expert's way. Is being an expert a state of mind and being a beginner a state of mind? Is that what is being pointed to in this? In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. And in the experts, there are few. In the experts, there are few. That can be expert as a mindset that refuses to admit or explore new possibilities. Expert as a mindset that refuses to think there's another way of going about things. But then there is also expert that you have done something so often, you have actually realized that there really is only one good way to do this. Or expert in the sense of a dancer who makes the precise move at the precise moment, at the precise time. So expert in the sense of not being paralyzed by the numerous options. Expert by knowing that there is only one path to take in this moment at this time. So in that sense, we might have Zen mind, expert's mind. It's the expert's mind that knows that, yeah, there are many ways to do it, but in this situation, there is only one way to do it. There are many ways to look at the world, but right now, this is the way we're looking at it. So how about the expert that does not refuse to admit many possibilities? How about the expert's mind that is infused with the beginner's mind? And perhaps I'm thinking of expert more as an adept, which is what Shokuchi was referring to on Wednesday in her yoga class when she told me that the pose I was sitting in was known as the adept's pose. And I thought, oh great, I'm an adept. So I think this combination of beginner's mind and expert's mind And how do we view the role of possibilities? It's possible to see an array of possibilities and choose one of them. It's possible to hold an array of possibilities and not be stuck. So in Zen mind, there is great openness, but there is also great form or formality. To do the forms, to give ourselves to the forms. In the beginning, we might do it with some rigidity as we are learning the forms. But as we practice and become familiar with the forms, we have to do them with some openness. Not get stuck on them and yet be faithful to them. So the Buddha said, this path is difficult. Difficult in the beginning, difficult in the middle, and difficult at the end. This path of practice, this path of containment, and this path of having a container, but also having that openness of mind. I was reminded of this during our practice period, that it's difficult. It was difficult at the beginning, and maybe in the middle, and maybe now at the end. It has difficulties. That's not to say that the path is difficult, but that it has difficulties. But the path itself can be difficult at all stages. There's a general tendency to escape, to try and get away from our discomforts. Yeah, to get away from them, to turn away from them, to ignore them. And our practice, our path, always brings us into facing our difficulties, facing our discomforts, facing the unpleasantness as well as the pleasantness. And that facing reality can be difficult. So yes, sitting in an armchair, reading Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and having this mind-opening experience, that there's another way to go about life. That was wonderful. And the Buddha also said that this path is wonderful in the beginning, wonderful in the middle, and wonderful at the end. And this practice period has felt wonderful in the beginning, wonderful in the middle, wonderful in the end, wonderful all the way through. Wonderful that we can do this. Wonderful that we can connect with each other despite the limitations of the situation. Wonderful that we can conjure up a collective practice through the technologies of the day. During the Rohatsu retreat, it was wonderful to do so much sitting. And it was also difficult at times. I had one of these, it's a realization and not a new realization, one that maybe we've all had from time to time. But for it to come like a thunderbolt in the middle of Zazen is very different to our normal consciousness. Okay, it just came as sitting there in Zazen, and the image that comes to mind is that memories were just being presented to me like flashcards or memory cards, one after the other. Boom, 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 boom. All the people that I've met through my life, all the situations that I've been in through my life, all the places that I've been, cups of coffee, movies, memory cards, flashcards, one after another. And then the thunderbolt. This body will soon be a corpse. Wow. And it's not as though I've been going through my life unaware of death or unaware of mortality. But it's all to do with timing. So that combination of like a deck of cards with all your memories on them, just being, and some of them were like snap because some of them were identical, like the same one again would come up, right? And then it's like the comment that covers the whole deck. And then after that, you have to get up and do kinhin. Right? You have to sit down again and, wow. That cannot stop you from living your life. That awareness of death cannot stop you from living, and hopefully will enhance your living. It will, as Norman was fond of quoting Maizumi Roshi, and might still be fond of quoting Maizumi Roshi. I don't know. Maizumi was like, Maizumi is to LA what Suzuki Roshi is to San Francisco. How about that? And my Zumi would say, we do this practice so that we can appreciate our life. And it's taking on board the full picture, the big picture, that allows us to live our life without getting stuck. So it's by absorbing the teachings of impermanence, insubstantiality, and insufficiency that we're actually freed to live and to appreciate our life. It's when we don't absorb these teachings, when we don't let them enter the core of our being, when we try to keep them out, when we try to escape them, then our life becomes kind of thin, and it's difficult to have a deep sense of appreciation for our life. And so we come to the end of this practice period. Not the end of our practice, and just the end of a certain kind of coming together to share our practice. A certain configuration of practicing together. And it came about at a certain time of the year and under certain circumstances. And we don't know really what's going to happen next. Just that we will continue to practice. And we will find a way, always find a way to practice, regardless of the circumstances or regardless of the situation that we find ourselves in. And I want to thank you all again and again and again for your practice and for this opportunity to practice with you, for our exploration of the Dharma, for our willingness to look at it and turn it over, let it in, and let it turn us over. As we turn the Dharma wheel turns us. And I really appreciate the way you have looked after your practice in this practice period. And in so doing, you have looked after everybody's practice. Another saying of the Buddha is, in taking care of ourselves, we take care of others. And in taking care of others, we take care of ourselves. So I really felt that during the practice period, but particularly during the retreat, where I looked at the schedule that I had set and realized there wasn't quite enough time on it to do the kind of cooking that I normally do. So the day before, I cooked up a bunch of soups and put some of them in the freezer. And I practically lived on soup during the Rohatsu retreat. I think on one occasion I even had soup for breakfast. Okay. But in taking care of myself in that way, I was able to take care of everybody else by showing up. Right? And in people being Doan or Kokyo, they too had to show up and set the stage so that they could show up. And so in taking care of others, they had to take care of themselves. And in taking care of themselves, they were able to take care of others, or they were taking care of others. So practice period is a joint effort. It's not one person. It's not even a small group of people within the practice period. It's the whole practice period. It's like a being in and of itself. We become another being in a practice period. And we become just members of that being. Okay. Like a centipede. Or some other thing. And it's very easy to see this at Tassajara, where each crew or team is looking after their part of things. And in looking after their part of things, they're allowing the whole to function. So there's the kitchen doing what they need to do in the kitchen. And in so doing, everybody else is able to do what they're doing. There is the maintenance crew keeping up with repairs, sometimes of kitchen appliances, sometimes of lighting or heating or doors or whatever, or sewage systems. And by them doing what they're supposed to be doing, everybody else is able to do what they're supposed to be doing. So you get to see this interconnectedness, this mutual dependency and mutual support in operation in ways that's more difficult in our urban life, because although we can see that the construction workers on the street are helping to keep the whole city going, it's harder to see the connection. Whereas when you bring it all down to a microcosm, such as Tassajara, it's very easy to see it. It's very easy to see how we depend on each other fulfilling their roles, and how others depend on me fulfilling my role. So in taking care of others, we take care of ourselves. And in taking care of ourselves, we take care of others. So again, I thank you all very much. I really appreciate our practice and practicing together. And I hope we get to do it again. I'm sure we will, in some shape or other, in some shape or form. And I suppose I would also like to say a thank you to the countless Buddhas across space and time who thought perhaps that my floral arrangements during the practice period were a little bit too Spartan. So, thank you all very much. I'm going to do my closing bows now, and then we'll have a questions, answers, conversation, which will lead up to our closing ceremony. Okay. Thank you.